Hello friends, in this video we will discuss certain important articles taken from the site of PIB. For those articles will have been published on 2nd January 2018, and all these articles have been selected keeping in mind the syllabus of our examination, that is RBI grade B as well as NABARD grade A and grade B 2018 exams. So let us discuss these related articles in detail in the following slides. Here we have a quick outline of the topics to be discussed in this video. We will discuss about 8 topics. We will begin with the institutional credit to small farmers. Then we will discuss about assistance for deep sea fishing and maternal mortality rate. Then we will discuss about production in horticulture crops and about consumption of urea and CSR expenditures by the companies. Then the efforts of public sector banks towards the mission of Swachh Bharat and the water harvesting techniques, or about something about water harvesting in the country during the rainy season. Our first article of today's discussion is related to institutional credit to small farmers. The government has taken several measures to increase the institutional credit flow and bring more and more farmers, especially small and marginal ones, into the institutional credit fold. The institutional here means via banking system instead of non-institutional like money lenders, etc. So for this step, a number of measures have been taken. A few have been discussed we will be discussing in this particular slide. The first one is interest subvention scheme. Under this particular scheme, for short-term crop loans up to 3 lakh, the farmers will have to pay generally they have to pay 7%, but under this scheme they will have to pay a 3% interest on the crop loan, short-term crop loan, if they have a effective repayment of the previous one. So it is basically to encourage the repayment of the loans by the farmers. If they repay properly on time and the proper amount for the next crop, they will get interest of 3% instead of 7%. The second one is the priority sector lending guidelines. According to these guidelines by the RBI, all scheduled domestic commercial banks have to at least give 18% of their adjusted net bank credit to agriculture sector, particularly for lending in agriculture sector, and this is really mandatory for these banks. Under this 18%, a target of 8% has been set for small and marginal farmers. This is basically to increase the flow of credit to small and marginal farmers. The next scheme is Kisan Credit Card, which is basically a kind of scheme to provide adequate and timely credit support from the banking system under single window to the farmers for their cultivation as well as other certain needs. It has a limit of 5 years, and a large number of farmers can take advantage of this scheme. It is basically a smart card cum debit card, and it has certain guidelines issued by the RBI for the implementation of this particular scheme. The farmers can take credit from this using this particular card for different kind of activities like pre-sowing or post-harvest management activities, as well as other needs depending upon their requirement at the time for the cultivation of their crop. The fourth scheme is joint liability groups. This is basically to bring small marginal tenant farmers taking a farm activities or even non-farm activities into the fold of institutional credit. These are being promoted by joint liability groups are being promoted by banks, and under this financing will be given for 5 lakh joint liability groups in which the farmers who are landless farmers will be given preference under this particular scheme, and it is being implemented basically by NABARD. The next is the relief measures given by the government from time to time. These are basically depending upon the needs. For example, in case of natural calamities, that include restructuring of existing crop loans or extending fresh loans to the farmers, relaxation in particular norms related to repayment of the crop loans by the farmers. Similarly, other efforts are being made by the government to ease the burden of institutional credit on the farmers in case of any distress situation. So all these measures are basically to bring more and more farmers into the institutional credit fold. The next we have assistance for deep sea fishing. This is a new sub-component with the name of assistance for deep sea fishing that has been added to the Blue Revolution program or mission, which is aimed for integrated overall development and management of fisheries sector in the country. This Blue Revolution scheme is a centrally sponsored scheme in which both state and central government share the funding for the implementation of this particular scheme. This particular subcomponent is to be implemented by Department of Animal Husbandry, Dairying and Fisheries under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. Under this component, financial assistance will be provided up to the level of 40 lakh per vessel for purchase of deep sea fishing vessel, including the equipments to increase fish production. This is basically to enhance the deep sea fishing, in which the fishing is done into the deeper parts of the sea. The fishing will be done to extract the resources of fishes from the deeper part of the sea in the exclusive economic zone of the country in the higher seas. The unit per cost of vessel is rupees 80 lakh. However, the assistance will be provided for 50%, and therefore a ceiling of 40 lakh per vessel has been provided, and it will be provided as central subsidy, and the rest will be provided by the respective state government or beneficiary or any financial institutions taking advantage of this subcomponent of Blue Revolution. Similarly, training programs are also being promoted under this scheme to help the fishermen to get knowledge about deep sea fishing techniques and procedures to help in development of deep sea fishing in the country. The next news relates to maternal mortality rate in the country. Recently, data has been released by Registrar General of India. The sample registration system report for year 2011-12 of India. According to this report, maternal mortality rate or ratio in India has been estimated at 167 per 1 lakh live births in the country. So this is an important data which could be asked in the MCQs related to our exam. The next article from PIB sites relates to record production of horticulture crops in the country. The data has been given about the production of horticulture crops in terms of area, production and productivity for the different years. For the year 2016-17, as per the final estimates, the area under horticulture crops is 24.85 million hectares. However, the production for this year is about 300 million tons and the productivity is 12.1 tons per hectare. For the year 2017-18, as per first advanced estimates, the figures for area, production and productivity are 24.92 million hectares for area, 305.4 for production and 12.3 for productivity. So we can basically see there is increase in productivity, there is increase in overall production, as well as there is marginal increase in the area under horticulture crops. These have been a relative change with respect to 2015-16, and these have been relative changes with respect to 2016-17 in 2017-18. So you can clearly see that there has been increase in the crops under horticulture. So horticulture is becoming more and more likable by the farmers, because horticulture crops fetch higher value for the crops as compared to food grains. There has been a record production of 178 million tons of vegetables in the year of 2016-17, and there has been increase of 7% production of increase of 7% in production of onions, and for potatoes it is 12% higher as compared to 2015-16, and that for tomatoes it is about 10.5%. However, for the year 2017-18, the values are different. The onion production is about 4.5% lower than the previous year in 2017-18. Similarly, for tomato, the production is 7.7% higher than the previous year. The total horticulture production in the country is about 305.4 million tons, and it is 1.6% higher than the previous year and about 8% higher than the past 5 years average production. So from this data is basically what we conclude, that horticulture crops are being more and more produced in the country, which is a positive sign, and this could help to meet the target of doubling the income of farmers by 2022 as envisioned by the Prime Minister of India. Next we have schemes to bring down the consumption of urea in the country. The objective for bringing down this consumption is basically to encourage the balanced use of fertilizers in the country to help promote soil health management. For this, 2 steps have been taken. The first one is the promotion of neem coated urea in the country. The different advantages given by this particular neem coated urea is that there is zero diversion of the subsidized urea for industrial use, which was until recently was rampant in the agriculture sector, from which for agriculture sector the urea is highly subsidized and it is then diverted towards the industrial use. So this has been stopped by use of neem coated urea. Secondly, the requirement of urea for cultivation of crops has decreased than the normal utilization, because in neem coated urea the release of urea to the plants is gradual as compared to the non neem coated urea. So it will basically help in increasing the savings of government in terms of subsidy to the farmers for urea. It would also help in increasing the yield, lessening the wastage and lessening the water pollution as well. This neem coated urea also works as pesticides, so this is another benefit for this particular initiative. The next initiative introduced by the government is that 45 kg bags of urea will be utilized in place of 50 kg bags. This initiative has been taken again to bring down the consumption of urea, and it is basically estimated that by this step there will be about 10% decrease in the consumption of urea in the whole country. The next news is about the CSR expenditure. Here CSR means corporate social responsibility. These are the responsibility which the big companies or normal companies, private companies have towards the society from which they have their resources. According to section 135 of Companies Act 2013, all the companies are mandated to spend 2% of their net profit towards SCR activities via SCR expenditure. And for the financial year 2015-16, about 13,625 crore rupees have been collected via different countries for the CSR expenditure. Among the different categories for which this expenditure, these funds are to be utilized, education, differently abled and livelihood got the maximum CSR funds. However, the slum development, it got the lowest funds of about just 10 crore in this particular financial year. The second position, this was the first, the second position was held by the health sector, including eradicating hunger, poverty and malnutrition, including safe drinking water and sanitation. And the third place for expenditure is rural development projects. So these are the top three fields among which most of this amount has been expenditured or spended. Next, we have certain initiatives taken by the public sector banks to further the mission of Swachh Bharat. These include the public sector banks have been asked to ramp up the lending for rural sanitation sector. Next, they have been asked to provide access to clean toilets for customers across all the branches in the country. The next initiative taken is the Swachh Bank or Financial Institution Awards. This is basically to recognize exemplary contribution under the sanitation sector, and this will be done via a competitive process. Next initiative taken by the public sector banks is that the CSR funds will be diverted towards Swachh Bharat mission in the financial year 2018-19. So this has been directed by the government to the banks to spend the SCR funds for sanitation, for improving the sanitation across the country. The next we have the water harvesting, information about certain water harvesting in the country. As per the data collected by Central Groundwater Board across the country, and upon comparison and analysis of pre-monsoon 2017 water level data with the decadal average for the decade 2007 to 2016, according to this particular data, it indicates that there has been decline of 61% there has been decline in groundwater level in about 61% of the wells across the country. It is being estimated that annually about 68 million cubic meters of surplus runoff can be harnessed to augment the groundwater. Therefore, a number of steps have been taken by the state as well as the central government to encourage water harvesting, especially during the rainy season in the country. And for this, to give effect to this, about 30 states and UTs have made it mandatory to do rainwater harvesting in their respective states. Similarly, a master plan for artificial recharge of groundwater was formulated in the year of 2013. This document basically provides information about area specific recharge techniques. So these are basically techniques are being provided under this particular plan to augment the groundwater resources based on availability of source water as well as capacity of subsurface formations to accommodate the groundwater. This plan envisages the construction of about 1.11 crore artificial recharge structures in both rural as well as urban areas. Similarly, groundwater resource assessment is being done across the country, and it is being done periodically, and it is being carried out by Central Groundwater Board as well as state governments. The total annual replenishable groundwater resource in 2011 was 433 billion cubic meter, and as per the latest one, this was in 2011, and as per the latest one of 2013, this has increased slightly to 447 billion cubic meters. Also, it has been found that a large number of groundwater resources are overexploited, and this figure comes out to be about 16%. So out of the total assessment units under the groundwater resource assessments, about 16% of the units have been categorized under overexploited categories. So we need to take steps to control this overexploitation, as well as to recharge the groundwater in order to ensure a sustained supply for the utilization of water on the longer term. So this was all for all the important articles related to our examination from the PIB sites for the day of 2nd January 2018. For more videos, you can visit www.edutab.co.in. Thank you and happy learning.